Another thing that we spent a lot of time with on that movie was the music because we had suddenly a new freedom to do, rhythm and blues, like to do like contemporary kind of music. And one of the directors, Bebo Bergeron, loved that stuff and played for me lots of the music that he loved. And it was so much fun to listen to and discover Bootsy Collins, this bass player who played with, Funkadelic, and to really go for a different sound and make the Angelina Jolie character like a real like Jessica Rabbit kind of babe.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Kingdom of Dreams podcast. In today's episode, I have a guest that I've already featured on this podcast, Mark Solomon. He has worked on films like Chicken Run, which episode you can watch in the description, which was done a few weeks ago. He's also edited Space Jam, the original one with Michael Jordan, as well as Tim Burton's Frankenweenie. And today's episode features Shark Tale, DreamWorks animation film that came out in 2004. Can't believe it's almost been 20 years. And we dived really into this amazing film. We spoke about the cast, we spoke about little anecdotes here and there, the whole arc of the story, and the references to the popular culture. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. How have you been?
Very well. Tell me
Well,
what's In Search of My Sister?
In Search of My Sister is one of the feature films that I've directed.
Aha.
It's a feature narrative documentary about an American Uyghur activist. I'm not sure if you heard of Uyghur Muslims in northern western part of China.
Oh
They're
yeah, yeah,
about
yeah.
right, and so she's a Uyghur activist living in DC, and because of her activism in the United States, her older sister, who was a medical doctor, was taken away by
Oh,
CCP among 1.8 to 3 million Uyghur Muslims. So the film is a journey of her, going around 12, 13 countries trying to create awareness of the issue while also finding clues to her sister whereabouts. So that's what that's about. It's on Amazon Prime and a few other platforms. But thanks
I'll
for
look for
asking.
it. I'll look for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Different
No,
from
thank
Shark Tale and the kind of stuff that I did.
Well, that's the kind of stuff that I've always wanted to do, but somehow I landed into this world of social, political. I mean, everything that I've done so far, even the film Citizen of Moria that you see the poster,
Ah,
that's also human rights, but with a protagonist story, which you probably enjoy more because it's about an Afghan filmmaker who gets on Taliban's hit list and he fled Afghanistan without saying goodbye to his pregnant wife and his kids, and he ends
wow.
up in Europe's worst refugee detention center. So he and I, mostly him, um, covertly filmed there, and it's his journey of trying to get out of there while living with the guilt of leaving his family. So
That's really interesting because in the opposite. I mean, I thought I was going to wind up in documentaries. I mean, I produced a documentary to go to Nepal. I went with this group of doctors and I filmed them doing eye surgery, like cataract surgery in a really
right.
remote location where people never see a doctor. And I did it like one man band, like I was the whole crew and produced and wrote and directed. And I thought, yeah, this is what I should be doing. This is what's going to happen with my life. I'm going to be making these kind of documentaries for PBS. And then the next thing I got was Space Jam. And I
Isn't
thought,
that
this is
crazy? Yeah.
it.
It is so
It
crazy
is.
how those things work. I mean, it's like you always end up where you want to go, but the journey that you think you're gonna go through is a
Yeah, yeah.
completely different journey. But what was that film called? The one in Nepal?
Himalayan Healthcare, which
Is
was
it
like a
online?
sponsored film for the organization. It's on YouTube. It's like 20 minutes long.
Himalayan Healthcare. I'll take a look for it. Um, yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I actually got your book.
Very good. Nice to
Thank you
see
so
that.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Of course, I read it. And just to kind of let people know what the exact title is, Over the Shoulder, A Freelancer's Guide to Telling Stories and Editing Films.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, there was a lot of stuff in there that I have sort of gone through making films, but it's always good to refresher to know because sometimes you
Mhm.
dive so much into things that you overlook things. But it's a great book for anyone who's not only starting out, but in the middle of their career, or even if they're, at the top of their career, it's good to read it again because it just refreshes your memory, as sometimes you're so involved in, in a project that you lose sight of everything other than just that
Hmm.
particular project. So great book. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
That's very
Very
kind of you.
simple. Very simple, straightforward, easy to understand, and fun to read.
Good, thank you. That was the intention. It was to help people in the position when I was in starting out, where I sort of, could have used some more of a guide about how to find my way into the kind of projects and the kind of work that I wanted to do. So that was I was writing it to my younger self and to the students that I've met along the way who are in a similar position.
Right. Yeah, no, and when did you publish this? Just recently, right? I'm assuming
February. So the
February.
beginning of this year.
And what have you done any book tours or anything with the
Yeah,
book?
I've done some author events. First, in the places where I wrote the book in Montreal. I did a
Mm-hmm.
couple events there early on, and in around where I'm living now, and outside of Boston. I've done like events at a library and at a cafe, and been doing podcasts like this and talking to people online. Going to be
That's
doing
great.
another one in March in New York City at the Drama Bookshop on March 13th. So
Okay.
that I'm looking forward to because that's sort of a specialist bookstore for film and theater, which is really
Mm,
my background. And so I would like to talk to the people who frequent and go to that theater. So it's in the heart of the theater district in Manhattan.
that's awesome. That's really good. But how about schools and university? Do they invite you over? Because I mean that's where
No,
a
they
lot of
should.
yeah,
That
they
hasn't happened
should.
yet. Haven't happened yet. I've taught at a couple schools around here, but I haven't gone in to talk specifically about the book. I think that's a good
Yeah.
idea. That should be
Yeah,
that.
maybe reaching out. Sometimes reaching out is an only option if they're not reaching out to you. But that does
Absolutely.
help.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you again for writing. And I just finished watching Shark Tale,
Uh-huh.
which was a very, I've seen it a few times, but I had forgotten so many jokes and quirks and all those things in
Hmm.
there. And what a great, originally it was supposed to be called, I think, Shark Slayer because you
That's
keep
right.
seeing, right? And you keep hearing Shark Slayer throughout the film. Great film, but one of the things that really got me was, I knew this, but when you see it on screen, when the opening credits come up and you see
Hmm.
the names, Will Smith, Robert De Niro, Jack Black, Renee Zellweger,
Angela Jolie.
Angela Jolie, Martin Scorsese, and
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, what a cast and just all
Yeah.
the popular culture humor in there, and it lives up. Animation probably doesn't live up. I mean, I think animation obviously back then was different. Now you can see like Netflix TV shows in a similar animation style. Obviously, technology has evolved. But
Hmm.
story-wise, it was really well done, and the characters are really, really good. And
Oh, thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. Tell
It
me
was
how.
fun to do.
Yeah, tell me how you. I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit with Chicken Run and everything, but just the evolution of your involvement in Shark Tale.
Well, I wasn't because I was had done a couple shows at DreamWorks. I was sort of on the radar of those shows there, and I think I had a couple. So I was came in as like a second editor, preparing for a screening, like in work in progress screenings. And so I was there early on at the very beginning, and then I came in later as well. I think before and after Chicken Run when I was away in England
Mm,
to help out for particular screenings. And it was a different project from the other ones that were being done there. Usually in animated movies, especially that sort of DreamWorks Disney style, there's a desire to be, an evergreen, that you don't tie it to any one particular time or place so it ages better because
yeah,
figure if the audience is 10-year-olds or primarily like young audience, you want to appeal to the young audience, in the future as well. So you don't go in for pop culture references that tie it to a time. But Shark Tale was the one where they said, let's try it. Let's this one, let's make it, about today, and to use music that's sort of in a different style from most animated movies. And that was really fun to explore, because it's music I love. That's sort of like R&B, more urban kind of sound, but you don't really hear much in animation. And to explore what music to use and what goes with what particular scenes, and to try to think about how music and story go together in a different way was liberating. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. You said you were working on a couple of TV shows. Were they DreamWorks TV shows?
Other movie, what I call it shows, that they were movies. I worked on
Oh, okay.
Spirit, the one about horses.
Yes, of course. One of my favorite films.
Yeah, that was also a very different experience to Shark Tale. I mean, like they were looking for a range, and it was fun to explore those kind of different kind of projects. So Spirit and Shrek and Chicken Run and Shark Tale. I mean, those were the few that I was doing at DreamWorks when they were just building the studio, which was a very exciting time. People were really looking to the future of building something new, and it was exciting to try things and
Yeah.
and to find what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, when you said TV shows and then you talked about what works and what doesn't, not many people even at DreamWorks know about this, and I'd be happy to know if you know. There was a show that came out in the late 90s. I mean, there was Father of the Pride, which was like a big thing on ABC, I think, about
Mhm.
the
That was
two brothers, the one that work with the lions. It's like based on them. What's their name? In
Siegfried and
Vegas.
Roy.
Yeah, Siegfried and Roy. Yeah. There was a show, that one, and there was Transylvania, but the one that I've talked to so many people at DreamWorks, only one person have remember that, in Invasion America. Have you heard of it?
No, tell me, what about it?
So it's literally anime style,
Uh-huh.
about takes place in LA, and how the aliens have come down to Earth to invade America. And
Hmm.
I think it lasted like one season, and I remember I was able to get, maybe I don't know if I should say this on the podcast, a co I was able to get like a bootleg version DVD from eBay because they were going on
Wow.
sale. Because I couldn't watch them. They were not showing them in Canada, so I still have it. I still have the DVDs, and it's such a great show that it got canceled after the first season.
Who knows why? I mean, you work on things, and you always, you give your best effort, and you never know what's going to happen. You figure that's not in your hands. And sometimes things that you never expect to work blow up and become, a brilliant success, like Shrek. I mean, the early days when I was working on Shrek, you wouldn't think it was any different from the other kind of projects that they had. It seemed like we were struggling with the story, trying to find the way, and it had lots of problems. And then it blossomed into this, big, huge success. And then some projects where you have lots of faith in, and you
Yep.
think, oh, this is going to work. This is going to be great. People are going to love this.
Yeah.
Radio
No,
silence. Nobody
I
goes.
I experience that all the time, so I completely completely understand. It's like, when you have hopes for one, it doesn't go that way, and vice versa. But when going back to Shark Tale in your book, Over the Shoulder, in terms of composing the story and structuring the story, which you talk about in this book, and sort of tying that into Shark Tale, tell me,
Mhm.
as an editor, what your process of that was.
Well, when I was there, we were looking for how to get into the world of the reef. And the beginnings are tricky. It's the most important thing in a movie is the end. The next most important is the beginning, and then the rest is in the middle, like so that you take people along for the ride. And trying to figure out how to get into the reef, this very unusual world where it's sort of like Times Square
Hmm.
in an urban setting where there's media, where some of it gets explained and some of it doesn't. And we had like, so we were trying stuff with like police car, following a police car and using the police radio as a squawk box, or a I think that's in there, some that's still the weather report from a helicopter.
Yep, yep.
And just putting all these elements in, and seeing, what would draw people in a way that's unusual and engaging. And then the other part of the story that was we spent a lot of time on was the Oscar's lie. He goes, "Did you kill that shark?" Yeah, 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 yeah. I killed that shark. And like how to set that up so that it felt like the way lies spread, that it starts as a simple, innocent thing, and you don't think it's going to matter to anybody, but then it certainly has these ripple effects and this wave that rolls out. And to create that feeling, because that's a big turning point in the story. And then
Yeah.
the other thing that we spent a lot of time on was with Lenny, the vegetarian shark, which, the subtext of which is pretty much that he's gay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And to do that in a way that is engaging and not offensive and not, being too obvious or too hidden. Like, how do you t talk to a big, global family audience about an issue like that in a way that people can enjoy? And that was, we spent a lot of time, massaging those scenes and trying different things. And that was the exciting part for me, was to sort of see these like hinges in the story, and like how there's sometimes when you can sort of skip over stuff and go quickly, and somewhere you really need to have like a moment by moment follow the thought process of what the characters are going through, that gets them from where they were in the beginning to a decision point, and then the whole story turns on that.
Yeah.
And that was,
And
yeah, a lot of
and
fun.
and I thought, I mean, obviously at the time when it came out, if the film had been about Lenny played by Jack Black, it probably would have been received, in a way that it was, because at the time things were different. Um,
Hmm.
but I think for me, it was Lenny and Jack Black's movie, because the whole, Will Smith is great and everything in the film, and yes, he's a global superstar at the time, but the story and the arc of Lenny and trying to become like a dolphin from a shark,
Yeah, it's
I,
more
I was
personal.
it was very, it was very fun, it was very personal, it was very funny, it was done very, like you said, in a way that it just the kids probably never got it. Like even some of the jokes that I heard today, not that I was a kid at the time, but it went over my head, and
uh
I picked it up now. And it's funny how same thing with Shrek. It's just some things don't understand until a certain stage of your life. You don't get the depth of it, which is what I
hmm
like about the humor in Shark Tale and Shrek.
Yeah, there's something, well, you want to reward close attention and give people a reason to see the movie more than once. Where if you have this feeling that there were layers of the story that you didn't catch on the first go, that it makes you want to go back and see it again, that's a big win. That people are really engaging with it and want to understand the details, or like seeing things in the background. That was a big thing in the Aardman stuff like Chicken Run, and Shrek has some of that too, where there's action in the background that's not called attention to, but if you are looking for it and pay close attention, you see, oh, that's funny. Look at that. Look what these characters are doing. And in
Yeah.
Shark Tale, all that inventive stuff that's at the car wash, the whale wash, where this whole
Yeah.
world is created of how the machines work, where it's almost like I don't know if you remember the Flintstones, where they had dinosaurs creating
Yep.
all sort of automated machines. So here was an underwater car wash where they have all these stations, and they use sort of the underwater creatures and things to create this very inventive and multi-layered world.
Yeah, no, that's again, I mean, there was so much popular culture, there was so many, not even popular culture, but also like timely references of the things that were going on, and people were able to relate to them. Kids were able
Hmm.
to, and educational as well, like car wash, right? Like, okay, how does a car wash work? But it's like a whale wash,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so many other elements. You mentioned Chicken Run, and it's funny. I just kind of going a sidetrack here. The day we spoke, I think few hours later, the new trailer for Wallace and Gromit film came out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's Feather McGraw is in it, the penguin.
Oh,
He makes
feathers.
a
Aha.
Yeah, he makes a comeback. So I thought I think it's released on in the UK with like 100% Rotten Tomatoes. I think it comes on Netflix on January 3rd.
Oh, I
But
haven't seen that yet. I'll look for it.
yeah, it's called Wallace and Gromit, and oh my God, it's such a simple name, and I'm forgetting. Let me a second. It is called Wallace and Gromit, and Vengeance Most Foul. It's not a simple name. It's a very
Ah,
complicated. But I thought
company
I
that
should mention
references
that.
Hamlet.
Yeah. But I thought you should, I mean, I should mention it because I mean, we were talking about the penguin, the train
Mhm.
sequence, but I should bring it up. Um, and you worked in this book. You mentioned you worked with such caliber people like Mel Gibson, in Chicken Run, and Tim Burton with Frankie Vinny, and in Shark Tale, you have all this star cast. As
Hmm.
an editor, what kind of work did you hear or did you see in some of the rushes or in some of the auditions, some of the voice recording is that didn't go into the film that you thought or the crew thought was funny, whether it was by Will Smith or De Niro or Jack Black or anybody else? I know it's been a while. I'm just trying to
It's
see if you.
it's an evolving process. I mean, like a lot of stuff with comedy is you just have volume, that you just try a lot of different things. I mean, and Jack Black was very inventive, and Will Smith went off on some things, and really because he was, I think, nominated for an Oscar for Ali when he played Muhammad Ali, was around the same time.
Yep, yep.
So there were a lot of inside jokes about Oscar Boumaye and stuff where we were sort of referencing Will Smith, um, that we tried, and with comedy a lot of it is like it gets a laugh at the moment, and then you try to put it in and you see how it fits in with the rest of the material, and sometimes it rises and it says, oh, that's really funny, we're going to definitely keep that, and sometimes it goes, it's funny on its own but it doesn't fit into the bigger scene. But
Yeah.
it's wonderful to have talented actors where they give you lots of choices, where you have lots of inventive work, especially comic stuff. It's great to see that. And and all the stuff around the racetrack with Martin Scorsese and Will Smith. I mean, those were fun scenes to cut, that sort of negotiating scene, like where they're sort of, okay, we'll divide it 90-10, no, 85-25, and all those things we tried it lots of different ways, and
Yeah.
great fun, great fun.
Eh,
Another thing that we spent a lot of time with on that movie was the music, because we had suddenly a new freedom to do, rhythm and blues, like to do like contemporary kind of music. And one of the directors, Bibo Bergeron, loved that stuff and played for me lots of the music that he loved. And it was so much fun to listen to and discover Bootsy Collins, this bass player who played with, Funkadelic, and to really go for a different sound and make the Angelina Jolie character, like a real like Jessica Rabbit kind of babe, was
Yeah.
really fun.
And I felt that. I'm glad you mentioned that. I felt that it was like there's a lot of similarities visually as well as personality wise between Jessica Rabbit and
Uh,
Angelina Jolie's character. But again, when I remember when the trailer came out, seeing Martin Scorsese in a
uh,
film, and then on top of it, in an animated film, and then as a fish. I mean, how do you know the process? I mean, I'm sure Jeffrey Katzenberg and Spielberg, with connection with Martin Scorsese, but to bring him on board who has never done anything like this.
he was
And
great, wasn't he? I mean, he was
yeah, it
so
was
much
amazing.
fun, and he really enjoyed it. I mean, he got to do. That's the appeal, that it's good for filmmakers to remember that if you offer somebody well-known something that they don't usually get to do, that it has a real appeal. I mean, he has family and young relatives that I'm sure would see Shark Tale that they can't see Goodfellas or some of the other movies that he's made, and that he can reach a new audience and do something new and different that's, fun and lighthearted. And he was a, great sport for pitching in and doing it. I mean, and I would say that Jeffrey Katzenberg can be very persuasive.
Yeah, yeah. But the thing I mean, a lot of people probably picked up on it, but not probably the kids at the time or even now, is that you have De Niro and Scorsese normally when they work together in films like Goodfellas, Casino.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many. It's Scorsese that is taking charge on De Niro. He's the director.
Hmm.
But in this, it's completely turned upside down, where De Niro is calling the shots, and I thought that was
Yeah.
pretty fascinating.
I think good for, and fun for them.
Yeah.
That's what made it fun for them to try something different. And to be open to it means says a lot about them, that they're not rigid and strict about who they have to be and how they are presented to the public. I mean, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
And you tell the deliciousness of that they enjoyed what they were doing. And that adds a lot because like in an animated movie, the voices is really the only organic element that you have that originally starts with a human voice because the stuff is not handmade. The picture isn't handmade. The music and the sound all come through sort of, big technology sources. And the voice is the organic thing that you base everything on. And that when the actors are enjoying what they're doing and that the editing doesn't get in the way. I mean, that's the big thing with editing voice work is that when there's a really good performance, stay out of the way. Let it play. And because there's a tendency in editing to eliminate all the pauses because to make the scene go faster. And sometimes that helps, but when you have a really good actor, the pauses add a lot, and that their sense of comic timing is that going with what the way they do it, can really add a lot, and a lot of the editing is a sort of a hands-off approach.
Yeah. I mean, comic timing is everything, right? Like even like a
Hmm.
microsecond here or there, the audience might not grasp it. And for a comedian, I mean, I consider Will Smith a comedian because of Fresh Prince, Bel-Air, and all that stuff that he's done. Like they get it becomes their second nature. They just know exactly when to say something at this time and how long of a pause to give. And Will Smith's character in this film is Will Smith, but
Yeah.
with a little bit of a, freshness to it.
Yeah, I mean, lots of confidence, I mean, like he just would he would go riff, he would just go off and riff on things. And, so the only real editing to do is how to time it with the people he's talking to, because
Yeah.
usually the recordings are done all separately because it's getting big stars, getting their schedules to align. It's very difficult to get a couple people in the room at the same time. So most of the time they're recorded individually and they're just like hearing the voice of who they're responding to. And so that kind of editing, editing the voices, and there's in Shark Tale, there's a lot of dialogue scenes. And those scenes are led by like a radio play where you sort of build out the dialogue first
Yeah.
and then add the picture on top. So the rhythm is all in the words, as opposed to like an action scene or when you're introducing the car wash or introducing the reef. Then it's led by the picture or the music sometimes. Sometimes, I mean, we had a track in the beginning of there was a Jay-Z track, but living it up in the city, something like that. I can't remember the
Mm-hmm.
name of it, but it wasn't. We didn't eventually use it, but the rhythm of the visuals fit the song, so it gave us something to follow. So there's like one element leads, and the other elements follow. And sometimes it's picture, sometimes it's music, and sometimes it's the dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. And I think I obviously the name Shark Slayer perhaps for the kids kind of maybe sounded a little too harsh, and that's probably why it became Shark Tale. Let me know if that's accurate assessment, and if
Yeah.
so, when was it that was decided that we should call it Shark Tale instead of Shark Slayer? Because originally when it was announced as Shark Slayer. I remember that.
Hmm. It was later. I mean, I think maybe after they had probably taken it out to an audience and they tested some titles and they decided that, Shark Tale was told you enough about the what the subject was to engage people in a way that wouldn't be so aggressive. Like Shark Slayer is a little bit aggressive. and they want everybody to come. They want, you want you want moms and dads and boys and girls, and you want everybody to come. You don't have anybody have a reason not to like it because
Yeah.
they cost hundreds of millions.
And the interesting thing with Shark Tale was, I mean, that's not around the same time Pixar's Disney's Finding Nemo came out, which was, the only similarities that they have is they're about the world of fish, and that's about it.
Hmm.
But they're completely different films, not in terms of story only, but in terms of tone, in terms of approach. When you guys finished the film, I think Shark Tale came out in 2005, 2004, and Finding Nemo came out in 2003. So was there a pressure of, an audience that has already seen a film that is about the world of fish, and now you're doing this? Yes, it has a big star cast. It's a different film, but was there ever a pressure in terms of getting the audience in, despite the fact they've already had a great appetite with Finding Nemo and it was quite successful?
Yeah, yeah, there was, and it had happened before between Pixar and DreamWorks with Ants and Bugs
And
Life.
Bugs Life. Yep.
And a
Yep.
lot of that has to do with the available technology. Toy Story was the first CG movie, and it was very simple. So the movement of these toys, and it didn't matter that much. It didn't have to be naturalistic, but that was the best of it. So that they chose to do a story about toy that showed off the technology as best as it could be done then. And then Bugs Life was about articulated movement with the characters, where you could create bugs that isn't about humans, but they could make realistic bug surfaces and that sort of world of the grass height by the ground. And then the water is more complicated. We're to
Hmm.
create that sort of floating feeling through scenes, and how to make gravity, and to do scatter backgrounds where they would sort of just say, make these seaweed and fill this frame. And so a lot of the choice of story was dictated by what's new and impressive that can be done with the technology. And so the
Right.
underwater stuff came out, and Pixar went, yeah, we can make Little Nemo. We're Finding Nemo. And DreamWorks, yeah, said, well, if we can use the same, cool new underwater stuff that can be done with the way light refracts through the water, what kind of story can we do that's different from what they have? Because we're not going to go directly against them. So how far different can we make an underwater story from Finding Nemo?
And it was very different. It was completely the bizarro
Yeah.
world, right? Like it was like the upside down
Mhm.
or and whatnot. And despite receiving not so great reviews, Shark Tale did really, really well. I think it made over 375 million worldwide, and it was the ninth highest grossing film of 2004. So
Mhm.
from number standpoint, it did really, really well. Do you remember watching it first time in like a premiere or not test screening, but like a complete version, but watching it with average moviegoers?
Well, I remember, yeah, it's the big advantage that it has is that the color design is really appealing. That the colors really pop. It's very,
Yep.
really appealing, and the music. I mean, like you could see kids, bopping to the songs. That it was entertaining on a very visceral level, with when the music and the color look are appealing and inviting, and invite you to sort of enjoy what you're seeing. Yeah, the story's sweet, and it has positive elements and interesting characters and scenes that you remember. But the overall impression of being in a big theater and hearing that music coming through the speakers and seeing the beautiful colors coming off the screen has an immediate visceral appeal. You could tell that people really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And I know we may have talked about this before, and forgive me if we have, and just tell me if we have, is that, when you are watching a film that you have worked on, whether
Hmm.
it's the director, editor, composer, whatever, And when you're watching it the first time with an audience, there's obviously a level of excitement, but I know from experience there's a hell of a lot of nervousness, at
Oh
least
yeah.
for the first couple of times, but after that you kind of get used to it. So how do you, in just in general, like not necessarily with Shark Tale, that level, just talk about that. I mean, the level of excitement and then level of nervousness, and how do you sort of deal with that? And there's sometimes like if you, in your case, like for example, Shark Tale, if there's a sequence that you edited and you found hilarious and nobody laughed, and you're like, okay, where are we going with this? Like that feeling, if you can
Mhm.
tell me a story about that in any way, generalized or a particular film.
Well, the toughest screening is always the first public screening
Yep.
because nobody knows for sure how people are going to react. I mean, it's impossible to know. I mean, because you've been working as, and it's such a humbling experience because you have all these, experienced professionals who are working really hard on this for months and months and months and concentrating on every pixel of the frame of every shot. And someone's giving their care and attention to every element of it. And you take it to the mall and show it to a bunch of 14-year-olds who go, it was kind of good. I kind of liked it. I don't know about this part over here. And they're the jury. And it's a thrill just to see it on screen the first time. I mean, like there's that part of it. That you're actually watching the movie to see Shark Tale or Chicken Run or any of the animated movies I worked on. To see them for the first time with an audience is a thrill. Like it's finally being seen.
Yeah.
And then you get into the specifics of, okay, then you hear this sort of shuffling in the seats or a little mumbling. You go, okay, why? They're bored. Why? Where did we go off?
Yeah.
You're trying to analyze what happened, and so then it becomes a working process where you think, hey, we intended, something lags in this part of the story. Where does that start, and what can we do to shift that to maintain interest or to shorten the time when people are sort of feel restless? And
Yeah.
then after you see it a few times, seeing the movie becomes like a diary where it's like, oh, I remember that week when we were wrestling with this scene, and I remember when we had a fight about this, and this is what
Yeah.
we wound up with. And it's either like, oh, I'm so glad that we wound up with this, or you think, oh, we still have that in there. That how could we let that go? That's sort of
Yeah.
the daily
Yeah.
diary is what you're watching when you see the movie.
It's interesting you worded daily diary, but it's so true that like, whenever if I'm gone to a screening of a film that's 10 or 11 or 20th screening, and obviously I've kind of tuned out as to what the film is about or because
Hmm.
I've, seen it so many times, but there is that thing about, okay, how long did that scene take? Oh, we couldn't do this scene because the money wasn't there. And all those
Yeah,
fun things are great, but
yeah.
but it's interesting you talked about the screenings humble you. I spoke, Simon Wells, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I told him this long time ago in one of the earlier episodes. So the very first film that I directed, Only 78, which was about 10 years ago or so, um, the very first screening, it just blew my socks away in a sense that people, it was packed, standing ovation. I was on the top of the world. And then we did a second screening, and I don't know what went wrong with the promotion and stuff. And it was a big theater, probably a capacity of, I would guess, of over 1,500 people. Um,
Wow.
and only one person showed up.
Oh
And
no.
that I remember that feeling. That was such a terrible feeling, but it humbled me completely because I went from here to here
Hmm.
in a span of 2 days.
Oh,
And I was and looking back at it, I'm so glad that happened because it taught me something really early, that don't be on the high bandwagon for a long time because anything can happen at any time. So get used to it.
and same way on the other side, that
Yeah,
if you feel really bad about it, you
it can
know,
go up.
it can go up as well. I mean, that stuff is mysterious.
Yeah,
And
it's cool and fascinating in retrospect,
Mhm.
not at the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's
Great.
definitely an emotional roller coaster when you see it. And or when you come, to be with an audience when they're coming out of the theater and what they say about it. I mean, sometimes it's thrilling, like, oh, we got them. It really worked. These people got what we were trying to do. And sometimes they say, are we done now? This movie that was kind of like in Spirit. I remember coming out of the movie and this kid says to his mom, "How come the horses don't talk?" And it's like, oh shit, we've thought about that for months about how we would do that.
Yeah.
Or but that's what keeps it engaging and interesting as a process and a work to do that you never know what the result's going to be. And people can take it to their hearts or to leave it aside, and you never know. And that gives you a reason to stay engaged and interested in it, that is unpredictable is part of the appeal of movie making, I think.
No, I agree, and the thing that you mentioned about the kid asking his mom about why do the horses not talk. I mean, yeah, as a kid, you probably want them to talk because that's what you've been exposed to all,
Yeah,
through
yeah.
Disney movies. But the idea of a conversation being started, even if it's not something that you want to hear, I think it's a great thing because then you have people talking, and she may have explained, okay, well, that's the way they have done it or whatever. And as he
Hmm.
probably grew up, he realized, oh, so I think these conversations are really important. If people walk out without talking to each other, whether they like the movie or they didn't like the movie, I think that's where things have sort of not gone the way you wanted 100%. But even if there's some
Yeah.
negative views and positive views, at least they're having a conversation about it.
Yeah, the goal for me is always I mean, the ideal is that people
Of
watch the movie,
course.
the lights come up, and the world looks different because you saw that movie.
Yeah.
And that's what I aim for. I mean, like that to me is at the top. And I had that with like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, like to see like a, alien visit movie and you think, oh, that could happen. You look up at the stars when you come out of the theater and you go, oh, there could be somebody out there, or that
Yeah.
or however you see the world, that you see the world slightly differently because of this movie. I mean, I think that's why we do what we do.
100%. 100%. Any plans to write another book?
Yes, I have to figure out what that is, but yes, indeed there are, and I'll let you know when I have it. But I would
Well, I'm
like to.
sh
I enjoyed writing is a very interesting process, different from filmmaking. It was
how
nice
long?
to do.
Sorry,
It
go
took
on.
took about a year and a half altogether to
Okay.
write. And the appeal is that there's no big committee you have to talk to call it finished, and
Yeah.
to all be my own work, and to be able to have something tangible you can hold in your hand is also appealing. Because with streaming movies, I mean, like there's nothing that you have. I guess you can order it, you can still order DVDs or Blu-rays, but you don't have the thing in your hand the same way that you can hand to somebody and to hold it. I mean, like, so that has a real appeal, and that it has long life, that hopefully anyway.
You're so right about that because I experienced this myself. So, um, I have these customized USB sticks with my films on
Hmm.
them,
Oh
and
yeah.
depending on who I meet and if I feel there's something there, I'll give them that. And the result of that is 100% they would watch the films, all of them, as
Hmm.
opposed to me sending an Amazon link.
Yeah, yeah.
It's it's hit and miss. So I think that tangible thing, because people like realize, oh, you've this is something physical and you've taken the time
Yeah,
to
yeah.
put this on. And I think that works. That does work. I don't know how long it's going to last with the new generation and when they grow up and when we're gone, but it for now it does. It's people like that. People appreciate
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Interesting. So that's why I'm happy to have, yeah, I'm happy to have a book written. It makes me want to write more.
Is it going to be something about behind the scenes or a novel or you don't know?
Don't know, don't know. Don't It's too early to talk about.
Got it. Got it. Awesome. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time
It's
and the
been a
chat.
pleasure, Joe. It's good to see you again.
Likewise, likewise. We'll talk again, I'm sure.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mark. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.